Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Laravel Creator Series. And today we have JMac back with us to talk about some Cloudflare stuff. So, JMac, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been implementing Fast Laravel, your new project, into Laravel News, and now think we've got it completely set up and it's deployed. It's out there. So, we wanted to talk sort of a little bit about what all did you do?
Yeah. So we took a pretty systematic approach. There were definitely some things along the way that distracted us. I know you went to Laracon EU. I, of course, had the Laravel 13 launch for Shift. So, yeah, I think, we wanted to be systematic with it to really kind of prove out these strategies. The goal here is like a case study of a site that's high traffic, but also a site where the content's changing. So some people think, oh, well, I can't cache this page because you've got new blog posts and new links and new sponsors and partners. You got that toast notification at the top. Like there's a lot of stuff that's changing on the page. And I'm really trying to seek out like high traffic community sites where I can demonstrate, no, you can still use these fast Laravel practices.
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like, not even stats wise, just visiting the site, it just to me it feels quicker than it
Oh
ever
yeah.
has. So I think it's definitely working.
Yeah, we could pull up some response times for sure, but I know on Laravel Shift after I implemented this stuff, I mean, I was seeing like 20 milliseconds coming from the edge. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So talking about the Laravel news site, what was sort of one of the bigger things that we did that that you felt like is giving us the most benefit?
Yeah, I mean, again, we took that real systematic approach. So basically, we look at your request traffic to figure out like your top pages. So, of course, your top pages are going to be your homepage, your blog page, and then some of your higher traffic blog posts for that week or whatever. We're definitely high up in like your request hit stats, right? And the number of requests total. So we really kind of, again, analyzed those and kind of started to pick at those all the way down the list until it kind of became requests. We cached all of those. So now the top requests were things that were kind of these sub pages or things and didn't really have a high number. So we did probably the top five, I think, starting homepage, blog page, of course, the article detail page is the actual posts themselves. I think we did the links page as well. And then
Hmm.
you had like a sub links page that was pretty high as well, like the recent links. So not just all the links, but the recent links. So those were like the big five that we did.
Now we did have some challenges. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but the site is sort of static, but it's also very dynamic in like random places that a lot of sites probably aren't. We've got the partners that we have to think about and not have the same partner on there the entire day, things
Yeah.
like that. So let's talk about like how we were able to do that and keep some stuff sort of dynamic.
Yeah, there were probably three main things. So first, when the site was built, it used Livewire. And I think we mentioned this before, but it didn't necessarily need Livewire. Again, I think we reach for Livewire because it's so integrated. It's basically just Blade templates, and then you have the ability to make it dynamic. But even though everything you had was a Livewire component, you really weren't using any of the dynamic or reactive nature that Livewire provided, other than I think the newsletter form. So basically, everything was a Livewire component, but only the newsletter form actually, submitted in that dynamic, reactive response kind of way. So basically, all of those we just converted to straight Blade components. It was a super straightforward conversion. And then that was kind of the first challenge. Once we had that, we were able to kind of isolate again these few areas that needed to remain dynamic. So, like you said, the toast notification at the top, the newsletter, and then some of those places where you need to swap out the partner on page load. We don't want to cache the page and it be the same partner or sponsor for the whole day. I think you rotate those, per page request or by hour. And so those pieces we used Alpine Ajax, you were already using Alpine, of course, for Livewire. So we just added a little plugin that'll do some Ajax there to swap out that component. I think the third thing we kind of battled was you're on Laravel Cloud, which is cool because like the whole goal here is that as you cache more of your requests, you reduce your underlying server traffic, and therefore you could probably downgrade your compute, right? So this is going to save you in your server costs. We haven't done that yet. I know you're wanting to prove this out a little bit longer, but maybe next quarter or something we could go back and revisit that. Especially too as Laravel Cloud, expands this hibernate, like this wake on sleep. Like they're really reducing those response times. I think they're saying like, 500 milliseconds now to wake up a site. So again, if you're caching more and you're hibernating more, you're paying less and you need less compute. And even when you do spin up the site, if they continue to improve those response times, then like you could almost spin up your site on demand at that point. But with cloud specifically, they do offer edge caching kind of built into the platform. It uses Cloudflare underneath as well. But because we were already using Cloudflare directly, there was a little bit of competition between the 2 platforms because
Yeah.
they kinda have their own caching layer, and then we underneath, we're using Cloudflare already, so it had its own caching layer. So for now, we ended up kinda bypassing the Laravel Cloud rules. You get all the same stuff again underneath because you already were on Cloudflare. But there was just some competition. It added a little layer of complexity where, like, you also had to make sure to always bust the Laravel Cloud cache because it seems to be kind of separate. And it didn't offer as many hooks right now to kinda clear that
Mhm.
out.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that one that took us a while to figure out, like, where the competition was, and it was like,
Yeah.
"We've got it here, why is it that not doing it there?"
The team was super
So that w
supportive, like, in helping us kinda figure that out, but I think it's such a new offering that, it's very black box because again, it's Cloudflare underneath, so you're not sure, like, whose policies you're using. Are you using the Laravel Cloud policies? Were we using the Laravel news policies? It was a little difficult to kind of diagnose the throughput. So in the end, it was easier just to say, "Well, let's just use our Cloudflare directly." It's all the same.
and then that sort of brings up the point you mentioned, cache busting. So for the Laravel news site, we have to bust it, basically when you deploy, like every other site would do. But every time we publish an article or, links get approved, there was quite a few little like random places where we needed to actually dive in and bust cache sort of specifically.
Yeah.
Was there any challenges there from your point of view?
I think the most of that stuff you can accomplish through, event hooks, right? So, for example, when you updated an article, we can just listen to, the model updated event and make sure to clear cache for that specific article. Or we knew to also just go ahead and do the homepage, right? Because it's a recent article, it
Mhm.
might show up on the homepage or in the blog page. So it was pretty easy to trickle it down from like a Laravel event perspective. I think the got you in your case was that sometimes you would basically schedule an article to be published. So there's
Right.
no event that fires when that actually goes. You just kinda had a database query that's like, as long as you're greater than the published at, like, go ahead and show the article. So there was no in the moment, like, real-time trigger to hook into in that case. Again, there's a lot of options there that we coulda done. I think the simplest thing was you already had a command that was, like, doing the socials for those when they were published. So, again, we just
Mhm.
piggybacked that and said, "Hey, go ahead and clear out homepage, blog page, article page, for that." Or the links page too, I think we kinda did the same approach. So, it's all very straightforward to clear it, but finding some of those times definitely took us, a week or 2. We were like, "Wait, we're not seeing the new article." Uh, but, pretty straightforward to figure out, and you can always get in Cloudflare directly and just clear it, and I think we were doing that. But again, that Laravel Cloud added some complexity too, because 'cause we'd clear it in your Cloudflare, but then
Right.
we'd have to go, "Oh, yeah, Laravel Cloud has it too," and we go with it. So,
Yeah, yeah, which bypassing sort of took all that away, which was it sort of just started working magically at that point. We kinda isolated, "Hey, this is, this is doing that." But yeah, so that was you brought up a really good point there, because we at Laravel News, like, we end up writing the articles, like, the night before, and then we set them to publish the next day at, like, 9 a.m. That's sort of our main routine or schedule. So there's no events, but then we realized, "Hey, we actually run this other thing that,
yeah.
shares out to all the social media." And, so that was sort of a perfect use case. I mean, the worst case, it would be a still cache for, like, 5 minutes while that thing ran.
Yeah.
So that was pretty ingenious to find that one.
Yeah, and those are really the questions at the end of the day. Is it the end of the world that someone sees, the old homepage for an additional 5 minutes or an hour or something? Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
You want that latest article out there, you're sharing it on social, so we wanna clear it. Um, but, these are all questions, again, that you kind of got to figure out which caching strategy works best for you and your site and kind of what you're comfortable with. And I talk about all that in the course to kind of think through. And you're in full control of that. You can set whatever. So,
That's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, unrelated to sort of Laravel news side, but the course side itself. Everything you outline is basically works across any app, right? Like it's perfect for pretty much whatever you're doing in Laravel to speed stuff up.
yeah, like we said, I mean, this definitely works for an out of the box Laravel, but it really also can work again for other things like that are common in the community. I mean, inertia, React, anything like that. You're already kind of doing these API calls anyway. Whatever technology you're doing that with doesn't matter. The exception in this case was Livewire because it relies heavily on the session to function and create some of that
Mhm.
reactivity and make it very seamless with Laravel. Because of its heavy reliance on the session, Livewire is currently the exclusion. I am kind of talking to Caleb about how you might be able to have this like, anonymous component on the page that kind of can come to life after the fact. But again, there's so many ways to kind of swap that out. We found that a lot of the times, even though, again, in your case, even though you had written it in Livewire, it wasn't necessarily needed, and it was a super small refactor because all you did was take the blade component or the blade template and turn it into a component and just drop the Livewire part. Like it, again, you weren't using it. So I think, that might sound a little scary on the surface, but I think it's very easy to identify, "Oh, I don't actually need Livewire," and it's a super
Right.
simple refactor.
Yes, yes, and I would be surprised if a lot of people aren't sort of in the same boat of what I did. It's like, well, we're gonna use Livewire here, so let's just use it everywhere. And in reality, you might not even need that. Just
Yeah,
keep Livewire to what you're actually using it for, not for everything.
yeah, very common in developer world. Again, going way back to one of my first Laracon talks, Yagni, you're not gonna need it, right? Like, but it's the new
Right.
shiny, so, a couple years ago, it's definitely the new shiny. So again, I think you were saying this got redesigned a few years ago, and it was easy. It made sense to use, and it gave you flexibility for the future, but as always, you just kinda didn't end up needing that flexibility.
Right, right. Yes, exactly. Um, well, JMac, anything else that we sort of skimmed over in this conversation that you want to highlight that you want people to know about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, Fast Laravel, of course, I made earlier this year, fastlaravel.com. Again, as Laravel Cloud continues to improve its offering as well as its own built-in edge caching to their platform, these are definitely skills, you're going to want to take a look at. They've been around forever. Like I said, that was the whole point of the course. I remember doing this, honestly, probably almost 20 years ago now at some of my first jobs when page speed and really mattered from like an SEO perspective, right? And this was before serverless and all this stuff. So even things like horizontal scale back then didn't really get you the speed per se. That edge network caching is really where the speed comes in. And I kind of wanted to see what that looked like in a modern world with Laravel and Cloudflare and everything. So it really came together nicely. And like I said, I think these are kind of forgotten practices that are probably worth taking a look at again.
Yes, for sure. And two, I know we talked about Laravel Cloud a lot because that's what I host on, but this is any server, no matter what you're using, as long as you're basically have Cloudflare in front of it, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Laravel Shift runs on a $5 a month DigitalOcean box, and I get hundreds of thousands of requests, I think definitely per week, but probably about 50,000 per day, with active users, underneath, on a daily basis, and again, $5 a month, and basically the whole public's facing side of that site is cached, so really the only requests are coming through are the users that are running a shift at that time. And it's been humming along fine. So, proof that again, these strategies work and they work anywhere and they can honestly bring down server costs in a big way, especially a site at scale. Like I said, I'm going to be
Mhm.
interested to see in a few months if we can go down to the next lower compute and you never even noticed a difference.
Yes, I am too, because I have a feeling we can, but I've just been like, well, I got to make sure available
Oh,
for
yeah.
the next like 12 hours
Yeah,
in
yeah.
case something does go
Oh,
wrong. But
yeah.
I have a feeling we can already start dropping it down.
Always good to be cautious, but yeah, I think you're at what, like, you see spikes up into the 70% cache, every now and then
Hmm.
as this continues to take more shape. And honestly, we're probably aggressive with the cache busting. I think we could be more strategic. You don't have to bust all the cache every day at 9 AM. I think we were seeing that in the graphs where you saw a little dip. But there's other things we could do too, like pre-warm it, right? You could hit it as part of that script too to kind of make sure, okay, well, it's already in the cache again. So um, there's a lot of stuff again to talk about it all on Fast Laravel, but I think definitely an improvement where you were. I think you were in the teens on percent cached, and now you're a majority cached. So
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Well, JMac, I want to, thank you for coming on here and talk to us about, about all this. And, for everybody listening, go check out Fast Laravel. It's, highly recommend it. It's, like we said, it's made Laravel news faster, just feels faster,
oh yeah,
even
it
without
is
the stats.
faster.
It just feels faster. Yeah. And, but go check out that course because it's definitely one of those things, like he mentioned, once you learn it, you can put this forward to every site you build now and into the future. So it's like one of those like core things you should know as a developer. So go check that out for sure.